So this House believes that candidates should not be allowed to appeal to voters on the basis of religion, race, caste, language, or community. So what does that leave out? Height, physical ability, weight, curly hair? Ridiculous list, right? Clearly because it is. Why? Because what major social upheavals have occurred on the basis of the texture of one's hair? Unless that hair was curly and on the head of a man of African origin in the Americas, then yes, hair too matter. But then that's race and out of bounds. I'll tell you what else is missing from this list above: religion, race, caste, or community. Gender. Why is gender not part of the embargo list? Also, the first list of the panel that I was sent, there were no women on the panel. There were 6 men. I'm glad to see that's been corrected and we have 2 women. But I've been on enough panels and on the debate circuit to know very often we have only men on panels. So most panels have only men. Why do you think that is? Are men smarter or more articulate than women? Is it that the social order created over millennia has made it easier for us to stake our claim at any forum or in an arena because the structures that are the building blocks of society have been created for men, by men, to suit us at the cost of women, who many would say have to work twice as hard to be considered half as good, even if they are 3 times as good. Now, you see what I did there? I appealed to one grouping, the ladies, in this arena by making a statement they can relate to or agree with because they have faced that discrimination, harassment, or marginalization. They will get it and they will want it fixed. And they will want it fixed more than me being a man whose attitude may be, hota hai to acha, if nahi hota to it doesn't rock my privileged world. So is my appeal a sincere appeal, or am I just indulging in a vote bank politics to get the votes of one gender? You wouldn't know, but that doesn't matter. That the problem is real matters. Gender discrimination is real, and that is what matters most. So you know why we should be allowed to appeal for votes on the basis of gender? That's settled. Because there's an agreement that after decades of movements and mobilizations and political reforms pushed by feminists, many of them political movements, there was acknowledgement, yes, we have a gender problem, and we need to sort it out. The push for reform came from those most impacted, from women. Men didn't lead it because they weren't affected as much. So if that is kosher, is the only marginalization, harassment, or injustice happening or has happened ever in the past on the basis of gender and nothing else? Have we not seen any other marginalization on the basis of any other grouping? Women were sold as slaves in ancient times in several civilizations, and so were men, of a certain color, a race, or community. So was the case in India of bonded labor, or depriving people of education, or water, or farmland? That was based on caste and centuries of discrimination, and continues in many parts today, on the basis of religion too. Let me step back for a bit and, strip threadbare. Why do people or parties seek votes? Why do voters even exist? What does this entire democratic setup where we elect those who will govern us exist? What is its purpose? Electoral politics and the governance that emerges from it is the process of making policies and laws that create a society that is fair. Fairness is the touchstone. Laws that one by one or in big swoops correct certain errors or injustices that have crept into the social order over our history to create an environment where each of us can pursue our full potential in a fair and free political climate, and above all get justice, and if we cannot, correct it. Absolute justice is the final frontier of governance. Justice is the aim of politics. And to get closer and closer to that unattainable ideal of complete justice, we as people, vying to govern through electoral politics, have to correct past injustices, even as we attempt to make sure no new ones occur. That brings us to justice, which is the aim of politics. I'd like you to just keep that in mind. That's why politics exists. The very concept of justice has a human context. It's not arithmetic, where 2 + 2 = 4, whether you are there to observe it or not. You don't have to be the witness to this marvel of mathematics. It'll exist. But justice will only exist if we exist, and injustice too will exist if we exist. We cannot assume that only justice exists by our existence. The context of justice is human involvement. Human societies have always consisted of and will always consist of individuals who band together to form tribes. Ancient tribes based on which god we worship or what color or language we speak. Urban tribes based on which college you go to, where you like to party, how you like to dress. How many minutes is that? Okay. How you like to dress, or other things that band you together as gangs or groups. But urban tribes are very new concepts in the larger civilizational timeline since societies have existed. Our primary identities are still primitive and will be in the foreseeable future. The most cohesive, influential, and important tribes in human existence have been formed on the basis of language, race, caste, and religion that grew into sects or larger groupings, but all the ones that this proposition wants to ban. We conduct our lives with those identities as our primary influencers. Marriages, those of you who witnessed marriages or have been married themselves, that entire ceremony is based on which community you come from. Mundans, Janeus, for those of you who are privileged enough to be born Brahmin. Feasts like Eid, which I'm hoping I'll be invited to. Diwali, Holi. Every moment of happiness or celebration is on that identity, your religious identity. We conduct our happiest life experiences based on those identities, and we also carry out the most horrific and disgusting acts based on those identities. To assume only one side of the coin exists is just to reject societies as they have always existed. I know all of you are smart, intelligent people, so I'm not going to go into the world history of every social and political movement that's been driven by one of these identities, and that the House also wants to disallow. Angrezon Bharat Chodo was an appeal to race. Angrez was a race. I'm glad our founding fathers were brought up because they won independence on the basis of race. Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of the character." The civil rights movement was about race. Ambedkar and Jyotirao Phule's movement were about caste. Jesus was crucified because of religion. A clerk was killed because of religion. To assume that that was not the case is a complete misrepresentation of how societies still exist. You can say this, that in the past it existed, but it won't now. We're like in 2017. But my point is, if from 2,000 years ago to as recently as 40 years back and even 1 year ago, injustices have been occurring based on caste, religion, or any of these identities, it is presumptuous to assume we have achieved the pinnacle of evolution of society, that no more caste, religion, community, or race-based injustices can even exist or need to be corrected. And only the effective banding together of those who have been impacted will create a critical mass to make sure that reform occurs, like in the case of gender, which was also brought up. Gender was also corrected because there was a critical mass brought up. So, to refer to the same knowledge of history, most injustices in the world are based on identities we want disallowed in political appeal. With this proposition, we are trying to create a politics, stripping it off politics. Identity is politics. Group identity is politics. And to say conduct politics without referring to that identity is like saying make tandoori chicken without the chicken, or for the veggies in the house, make apple pie without apple. Without apple, it is not apple pie. Similarly, group identities are the building blocks of politics. You can't have it any other way yet. To disallow seeking votes on the basis of identity is to not just disallow democracy and politics, it is to dismiss the very concept of human evolution. I'm certain things like the extermination of Jews, the Hindu or Muslim deaths due to riots will be held up as examples of how horrible an appeal to our baser religious instincts can be. And yes, that is correct, but it happened. Now what? What do we do about it now? Injustices occurred and will continue to occur. So I will accept the proposition that this House believes that candidates should not be allowed to appeal to voters on the basis of religion, race, caste, language, or community, but on the condition that you have to wipe out every injustice ever committed in the name of religion, caste, community, race, or language. But for that, you're going to have to invent a time machine, go back to stop the first banding together of people under one collective identity and harming someone outside it, because it started and grew as the Homo sapien evolved and grew. It has what made us what we are. Good or bad, a bit of both, but this is who we are. You cannot undo 200,000 years of the Homo sapien evolution to create this complex society. And unless you can go back and fix that, you cannot do this. And you will not do this. Thank you.